Hey guys, sorry about that. I got started a little late. I was actually at a neighborhood meeting for the Milk District. If any of you guys don't know, I actually um, am very involved in the district I live in. Orlando actually has a really cool program where they have a Main Street program for about 12 different commercial districts where they have the levity to kind of control the look and the feel of the district and stuff like that. So I was at that, which is really cool because Commissioner Sheehan was there and Commissioner Ortiz was there. So it was a great meet and greet. Got to talk to them, and do a little local volunteering, which is the name of the game. Get involved, get local, and actually affect change in your area. So that was really cool. So sorry about that. I got a little caught up, but all in the name of local progress, which is really important. So it was a great meeting, and sorry about being late. Um, so, SB 7026 passed, what was it, 67 to 50, I believe. Um, Not surprising. I knew going into the day that it was going to pass. It had bipartisan support and bipartisan dissupport, so it was kind of interesting. Snap count in the morning was about 56 to 17, with 4 unknowns for the Republicans, and then I already had known that about 6 to 8 Democrats were going to vote for it. So it wasn't any surprise there. I tried to do as much wheeling and dealing as I could in the morning, but unfortunately, when it comes to these types of bills, there's a lot of complexity to it. It's not just about the thoughts and the ideas of the bill. It's really easy to get wrapped up, not being there, not listening to the debates, not reading the text of the bill and stuff like that to say, oh, it's about this or it's about that. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later, but remind yourself that everything's not black and white. There are many shades of gray, and until you understand the process that goes into actually making a bill, and that's kind of what I'm going to go through today, you never really appreciate really what a bill is about until you see it from start to end. So SB 7026, to kind of wrap up, was what was touted as it started as a public safety bill, then it was a gun bill, then it was a school safety bill, and at the end of the day, it was a mix of all three. It was kind of combination, and no one was really happy about it ending the way it did. You had Democrats that were unhappy because they said it didn't go too far or didn't go far enough. Some Republicans said it went too far. There's a lot of spending. As a lot of people said in the meeting, there was a lot of poison pills in the bill, as they would call it. And we'll get into all those. But needless to say, governance is messy. Legislation is messy. Nothing is ever as simple as one would like to make it seem. Nothing is ever as simple as just black and white and this and that. So I appreciate all the support. I just want to say that first and foremost. I appreciate everyone giving me the opportunity to go up there, not only to get our name, known and recognized, but for the ability to go and meet all of our representatives, our senators, to actually sit there as legislation was getting made, as they say, watching the sausage get made, because honestly, you don't understand the complexity of what it takes to get legislation passed until you watch a bill start to end. So I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna dive in and just go from start to finish about the whole experience, and then I'll give you my thoughts on the bill at the end, because I don't think there's probably anyone in the Libertarian Party, as we see, that knows more about the bill than I do, and I think most people can argue that and agree with that. So it started out after it actually had been brought up. There were several different talks of this type of bill. They always bring them up at the end of session just to see if something can get done. So the meat and structure of this bill had been talked about many times before. Year after year, everyone tries to pass gun safety bills, and for the most part, they get rejected because they go way too far. So it's not like this language hasn't been brought up again, and that's going to be an important point to remember as I get into this discussion. So it started out in appropriations, which was an interesting place for a bill to start out. And the only reason that this bill went to appropriations to start with is because it had the $400 million earmark for the programs that were going to be initiated because of it, and that was the school marshal program, which was arming teachers with guns. Because of that, it did not go to the Judicial Committee, which was a very interesting choice, since the Judicial Committee is where all other gun bills go. So that's an important distinction to make, that the one person or the one committee in the legislature that is supposed to deal with very tough decisions about, gun laws, constitutional laws, anything that might impact the constitutionality of what they are passing, should always go through the Judicial Committee. It did not. It went through appropriations, and that's because of the $400 million earmark. So it went there. They're like, whoa, I don't know if we actually, have the knowledge to pass something like this. So it got passed on to the Rules Committee. So start in the Rules Committee. That's where I got involved. Right after we went to convention up in Fort Walton Beach, Chris and I went on Monday to go to the Rules Committee, which is the first public hearing for this bill. It started out as 7022, and then because they added the school marshal program, which was arming teachers, it became 7026. Once it became 7026, the whole bill changed. Who cared about it, why they cared about it, what they cared about it, that all changed. And that was the starting point of what led us to where we are now. You had on Monday the big demonstration, the anti-NRA demonstration, the pro take all your guns and we don't care, or whatever you want to call it, demonstration. That's where you had a lot of the parents and the teachers and the students and everything talking. It made it out of committee. No major changes to the bill happened there. They added a few small provisions, but nothing big was added to the bill. It was what it was, and it started in the Senate Rules Committee, and the Senate Rules Committee, that bill was more or less mostly substantively unchanged from start to finish. And I know you've heard me talk about that a lot. Substantive changes. So what does that mean? So a bill has two major types of changes. You can either have technical changes, which is just, instead of us describing this, refer to this law or this bill. It's kind of, or we had grammatical problems or something like that. Those are technical changes. Those don't actually affect the legality or the cost of a bill. Then you have substantive changes, and substantive changes are where you actually have the meat of the bill is changing. So we're adding provisions, we're adding laws, we are actually changing the foundation of the way that both laws in the state work and the Constitution of the state works. So you're going to hear me talk about that a lot, but it's important because technical changes don't need revotes. Substantive changes do, and that was the name of the game in the House, and we're going to get there in a second. So the Rules Committee pretty much passed a bill or a law or whatever, a proposed bill, which is why they call it SPB, Senate Proposed Bill. It made it out of Rules Committee, made it to the Appropriations Committee. So it went to Appropriations afterwards. They did some technical changes to it, but really didn't change, again, the substance of the bill. So when it hit the Senate floor, the bill was basically kind of 5 major parts. So first off, it was an appropriations bill, which allowed $400 million for mostly the Marshall Program. You had $350 million for the arming of teachers, the training of teachers, everything along the lines of the Marshall Bill. You had about $67 million, which became about $100 million, for hardening schools, and then you have about, I think, $65 to $70 million now at the end of it, because we got up to about $500 million on the bill, for mental health in schools. And when I get into my discussions, that's going to be very important. But we're up to about $500 million now on the bill. So they allotted for all of those. Most of those programs actually aren't bad. The problem with that is that the funding is a one-time funding grant. So it's great. We get everyone kicked off in the program, but then it becomes a local problem of funding. And over again, libertarians are going to argue local funding problems are always an issue. It's great. The state has tons of revenue, and that's great. But county to county, you're always going to run into funding problems. So when you start these massive programs like this, and you have all these requirements attached to it and everything else like that, the major problem is year to year, in order for counties and cities and stuff like that to stay compliant with the program, you have all these earmarks that you are required to do in order for the program to fit within the bill. And because of that, it is going to be very hard for cities and counties and stuff like that to maintain these, especially in rural areas where their tax revenue isn't that great. I mean, they were already struggling to get SROs into these schools as it is, and now that it's a mandate to have a school safety officer in every single school, it is going to cost them a lot of money. So first and foremost, it was a funding issue, and that's why it went to appropriations. But the major parts of the bill was, one, you had the 18 to 21 restrictions. So at the end of the day, 18 to 21, you are not allowed to purchase firearms from a licensed dealer. And we'll get into how that's funny in a second, but you're not allowed to purchase firearms from a licensed dealer. However, you can be given a firearm by anyone who's over the age of 21. You cannot buy it from them, but someone can gift it to you. So parents can give it to their children and stuff like that. If you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend who's over the age of 21, or just a friend who just willingly wants to give you a firearm, as long as it's not a handgun, because handgun possession is illegal, they can give you a shotgun or a rifle or anything else like that. So possession is not illegal, and that was a major battle that they fought both in the House and the Senate. But at the end of the day, possession is not illegal. However, what is illegal? One, if you are between 18 to 21 years of age, it is a Class 3 felony to purchase a weapon. So you may not give anyone monetary value for a weapon in exchange for it. You may not also transfer a weapon. So you cannot go into a gun store if you already have a gun and transfer your weapon. So I can't give someone my Colt 45 and in exchange get an AR-15. Doesn't work that way. Two, it makes it illegal for gun stores to sell, transfer, or facilitate the transfer or sale of a firearm to anyone who is 18 to 20 years of age. So all these provisions that they tried to put into the bill, where it would make it, it would close loopholes on private sales and stuff like that, and it would force anyone 18 to 20 to go into a gun store and actually get a background check in order to purchase it, that's out the window. Now, there is a loophole in that, because you can still purchase a firearm online, and if you have an FFL dealer who is not willing to, check your license, well, there you go. Now you can get a firearm. You can purchase it online. So there is loopholes in the bill, and it's interesting. Why they did it that way, I don't know. Again, it was a very rushed bill. So 18 to 20, yes, there are issues with the 18 to 20 rule. Constitutionally, the way they get around saying, well, it's not illegal, it doesn't violate the Constitution because you can still possess it. I know a lot of single mothers out there. We actually met a single mother at Hooters who was a server there and said, listen, if I wasn't able to buy a gun when I came off to college, I would not have felt safe. I don't live in the greatest part of town because I can't really afford to. I don't have family members. I don't have friends. I don't have all these people that can just hand me a gun for, a couple $100. I don't know anyone like that. So if I wasn't able to purchase a weapon, I would not feel safe living where I live. And the argument got brought up over and over and over again. But we got to a certain point in this bill where no one wanted to listen to amendments added to it, especially in the House. And so it is what it is. People are going to fight it in court. As they say, this is not the end of the bill. The fight goes on. So that's where we're at with 18 to 21. The next provision that a lot of people had issues with was the arming of teachers. So you heard a lot of Democrats, why are we going to put more guns in schools if the problem is that there was a gun in the school in the first place? Well, here's my argument for that. It's a volunteer program. No one is requiring your county to be a part of it. No one is requiring the teachers to be a part of it. The coaches, the principals, anyone that wants to hold, carry, maintain, or anything else like that, no one is forcing anyone to do it. It is a completely voluntary program. And one of the arguments that was made in debate of the House, which no one had brought up to this point, is that 7 counties in the state already have or are initiating Marshall programs. The difference of it is each one of those Marshall programs is independently different in the way that it's sort of run and the requirements of that program. So one of the things that people brought up is it's gonna happen either way. Would you rather have qualifications where they need to be trained, they have to, maintain the weapon a certain way and stuff like that, or this, that, and the other? Would you rather have provisions for how qualified the responsible gun-owning teacher would be, what types of guns they're allowed to have and stuff like that? Or do you just want it to be willy-nilly and hope that the schools and stuff like that, the superintendents and the sheriffs and stuff like that come up with a good program on their own? Because it's going to vary from time to time. Now, we can get into arguments on either side of it. I listened to probably 17 hours worth of debate on this, so believe you me when I say I have heard it all. Personally, I don't disapprove of teachers having the right to have guns, especially because there are veteran teachers. There are teachers that used to be police officers or grew up with guns or are in rural areas and have been hunting their entire life. There are responsible gun-owning teachers out there who say, listen, I feel more afraid of going into a school than anything else because I can carry my gun up to the parking lot, and then when I walk in, I have to hope that an SRO is not going to sit outside my classroom while we're getting shot. And let's be honest, that's what happened down in Parkland. They didn't do anything. 4 layers of government failed. 4 layers of government. We say that governments, people preach, well, why don't we give government more power? Why don't why don't we just get more SROs and stuff like that? SROs are the answer. Let's get deputized police in there. Well, guess what? We have former police that are teachers. We have former military vets that are teachers. We have people that have been shooting all their life that are fully qualified to be volunteers in this program, and we really need to give them the opportunity to make their schools safer if that's an option. So the Marshall program is going through. It is a part of the bill. It is the one part of the bill that Governor Scott does not like. That might actually be the thing that kills the bill. God help us, and we actually get to go back and fight for a better bill. I mean, you heard people on the floor of the House today going, why do we have to vote for this bill right now? Let's send it back to committee and let's get a better bill. Let's get better language. Let's make this the bill that we all want. I talked to several representatives today that go, we hate to say this, and we're not callous for saying it, but had they gotten shot 6 weeks ago instead of 2 weeks ago, this bill would be completely different, and it would actually be a bill that everybody would vote for. And the fact that they're time constraining themselves just because they have flights home and they don't want to call a special session or this reason or that reason is one of the reasons that I don't trust government. Really? Your representatives, give us the best bill possible. Okay, so you have to stay up there for an extra 2 weeks. I'll stay up there with you. I will petition every single person that I need to get a better bill if that is the option of passing a terrible bill or we get a bill that's better. So the Marshall program is going through. It's a part of the bill, but it's the one thing that Governor Scott might kill the bill on and actually call back a special session and tell him to do a better job. Some of the provisions that are in there are for mental health, which is awesome. We need more mental health professionals in schools, and I'll get into that a little bit later on. But I actually believe that it is the one major cause of actual issues in school is the fact that these guys are alone. They don't have many friends. They've been picked on. They've had, family trauma and stuff like that. And guess what? They finally snapped. It happens. So they definitely need mental health back in schools. They have school hardening, which is going to be great. But hey, one thing that I brought up to everybody and people were actually shocked about is I read a statistic where 45 to 50% of the schools currently, because they have yet to be retrofitted or updated from the 1970s and 80s, is their door locks are on the outsides of their doors. You're going to force a teacher in an active shooter situation to walk into the hallway where there's a gunman, to lock his or her door, to come back in and close the door. And what happens if they get shot while the door's open? Now every single child in that classroom is not safe anymore because of a $30 lock or a $50 lock, and we're talking about spending $67 to $100 million to harden schools, and we can't even talk about $50 locks to actually make a change that would actually have helped out people. It blows my mind. It really does, and honestly, that is one of the things about government that frustrates me is their inability to think outside of the box. So that money is going to be spent, the Marshall Program is in place. Some of the things that I did like about the bill, again, mental health. We might actually start focusing on the fact that there is a trend with all of these shooters. They are loners. They have had significant life issues in all of these mass shootings. They always have a chip on their shoulder. They could have been identified and they could have gotten help earlier on. All they need is someone to talk to. They need someone to love them. They need someone to listen to them. They need help in these schools, and they aren't getting it. So I am for school health. I'm for helping children and helping them get, attention that they need, whether it's parental, which I'm definitely going to speak about in a second, whether it's, any sort of other help. We really need to think about that in America, the mental health of our students and how we got here. It's not guns. We've had guns in our society since the beginning of our society. Why is it now only an issue? Why is it now that we're having mass shootings? Well, a lot of that has to do with the way that kids are getting raised now. So I'm happy that's in the bill. They added provisions for due process on mental health and due process if you're a wife abuser or a husband abuser, or there's, you're a child abuser or something like that. There are now provision where your weapons can be taken away. We preach it all the time in the Libertarian Party, but responsibility is the name of the game. Individual responsibility. If you don't have responsibility, then you shouldn't have privilege. So if you're abusing your wife, you're abusing your children, you're giving a bad household and stuff like that, and you are physically causing violence, you are violating the NAP, you do not have rights to own guns and cause harm to people. I'm sorry, you gave up that right. You forfeited that right when you made the choice to harm other people. You have a problem with that? Come talk to me about it. I'd love to all day. Some of the problems that I had issues with is not the due process later on in the process, but the ex parte searches. So this is something that I brought up to many senators, to many representatives and stuff like that, and they were caught off guard. They're like, whoa, we weren't told that. We were told only if you have a mental health issue you could get an ex parte search. Not true. The way ex parte searches work in this bill is if a police officer shows up to your house for what they call a violent interdiction. So either you're belligerent and you're causing violence and stuff like that, or they get called up for a domestic violence or a battery or assault or, whatever, a violent interdiction. They can call up a judge at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, this is Officer so-and-so. I took someone into custody for violence. I have belief that they have weapons in the house, and we would like to take them. Any guns within the residence can then be collected. So I'm a roommate. I talked about this before, but I'm a roommate. If my roommates get into a fight outside our house, they can come in and take my guns. They have total legal authority to do so now. I hope police officers have good enough judgment that that wouldn't be the case, but hey, that's not always the case. You have dirty cops and dirty police officers that are going to use this to violate Fourth Amendment rights on minorities, on people out in rural areas, on people that they don't like. If you don't think that that's not going to happen, you're living in a different country than I am. That's all I can say about that. So I'm still concerned about that, and it's in the bill. It's locked into the bill. And I guess we're just going to have to wait for violations in order to get that changed. So that is what it is. That was one of the major fights that I had with a lot of people, but it's locked in. So that's locked in. I mean, those were the major parts of the bill. You had the school marshal program, which Democrats were against. You had the 18 to 21, which most constitutionalists and Republicans were against. You had the funding for mental health. You had the funding for school hardening in the Marshall program. You had due process for mental health issues and for violent offenders and stuff like that. One thing I was interested that didn't pass, and I'm just going to bring it up now, is Carlos Guillermo Smith, who is District 49. He actually brought up an interesting bill that said that if you were arrested or convicted for hate crimes or hate-involved crimes, for his scenario, he said that while he was in college, someone who was already on house arrest called him and his friend faggots and then punched them in the face multiple times to the point where he actually had to go to the hospital. If you're involved in a crime like that, I'm sorry, but if you have hate in your heart and you're violently attacking people as doing so, again, you gave up your rights. You can't attack people. Live and let live, guys. If you don't agree with the way that people live their lives in their own bedrooms, well, guess what? You're not in their bedrooms. Leave them alone. If a guy's walking around in a leather thong, maybe you say something about it. But if he's just walking down the street, live and let live, guys. It's a free country. That's the whole point. We don't all agree with everyone's lifestyles, but at the end of the day, we can come together as a neighborhood and love each other. So I'm actually kind of disappointed that they didn't vote that in. But as I'll get to later, essentially the entire House voted everything down so that it couldn't go back to the Senate, so that it could go straight to the governor's desk. And that was a move on behalf of both Governor Scott and the Republican Majority Whip to basically say, we're voting all this down. It's going to a vote. We're not changing anything. We don't want it going back to the Senate. Sorry, guys, but that's just the way it is. So it made it out of the Senate. Again, like I said, it was a close Senate vote. I think it was 20 to 18. One vote would have made the difference, but can't cry over spilt milk at this point. So it was close, and I listened to a lot of the arguments, and a lot of people made good arguments as to why they voted for or against the bill. And, the Senate had the most time to craft the bill, so they actually got time for their amendments to be heard, and they actually had time to choose which amendments they chose and didn't chose. And while we can, if you ever want to buy me a beer and debate why they didn't vote on things, I can tell you a million stories. But it made it through the Senate. Then it went to the House. And the House went quick on this. So they voted on Monday to approve it in the Senate and move it over to the House. On Tuesday, they listened to 4 bills, and then they got to the gun bill, and we went for 9.5 hours. We listened to amendment after amendment after amendment. Every single one of those amendments, regardless of which side of the aisle it came from, was voted down, and it was voted down straight down party lines. The Republican Party said, nope, you're not getting anything through, because we want this bill to go through as is. We don't want any more hustle and bustle on this. We're ending session on time. So that was honestly one of the most disappointing things for me, is to watch the entire breakdown of a legislative body, and we couldn't have debate, we couldn't have discussion, we couldn't have anything else, because they were getting strong-armed. They were told that they weren't going to get funding for their upcoming campaigns, that they were going to get blue-blocked, or blue-balled from budget lines, that they had in it. And that actually happened. I mean, people had their line items in the budget removed because they were one way or another on this bill. They strong-armed this thing. I had representatives in closed doors that say, hey, don't use my name, but you can let people know we don't have a choice in this vote. You always have a choice in this vote. I'm just going to put that out. You always have a choice. Stand on principle. Don't stand on party. But, hey, they had to vote down party lines if they wanted to keep their spots. So, it was a tough pill to swallow. I got very tired at the end of this exercise because I realized the futility of arguing something that had already been decided. I had great discussions with people. I got to meet all of our representatives running around, and I got some stories about that coming up. But great discussions. Thank you guys for making me go and see all your representatives, because it was a enlightening experience, and I wouldn't have traded it for the world. So Tuesday, straight up and down votes. It went through on Wednesday. We heard, again, another 8 hours of debates. And the debates went on, and the debates went on. And honestly, it was one of the hardest days I ever sat through, is listening to these debates. Because I will tell you, the one thing that everyone could agree on is that they don't ever, ever, ever want this to happen again. No one does. Everyone has disagreements on what's the safest way to go about keeping these schools safe, but losing children is never an option. I think we all know how the vote went. So at this point, I kind of want to get into discussion about the bill. And sorry, guys, I know you guys are all commenting. I don't have my glasses on right now, so I'm not going to squint. I'm completely blind right now, but we can have discussions about this later. It was a hard thing to listen to, but at the end of the day, the sentiment was, it is better to do something than nothing. You can always fight another day. You can take this thing to court. You can call Governor Scott. You can do everything. But at the end of the day, at least this bill did something versus nothing. And I think that's why everyone voted the way that they did for the bill. A lot of Democrats voted against it because, you know, the school marshal program, or they wanted, you know, guns taken away and stuff like that. But some of the things that I heard in the Senate or in the House today rang very true. And that is, sometimes it's better to do greater for the good than it is to try to get perfection. I guess that's a Voltaire quote, and I'm probably going to get that vote a little later on. But sometimes it's better to do as much good as you can than to try to be perfect, because at the end of the day, if you're perfect, you may fail. But if you did good, at least there's good to be done. There's a lot of people who talked about, you know, the safety of this or the safety of that, but I appreciated all the representatives who said, listen, I am standing here listening to every single word that you guys said on this, and for the first time we're having a discussion in the 6 or 7 years that I've been here, and while we may not agree on everything, we at least appreciate the fact that the discussion's being had. And it's important to note that gun discussions, whether, you know, they're minor changes or major changes, they haven't happened in legislation for a long time. And maybe sometimes we should have them. Maybe there are minor tweaks that we could make that would make things safer. One of the things that I found out is that the background checks aren't actually being fully utilized. There's better ways that they could be doing the background checks. You know, violent offenders could be reported to the state. Currently, they're not. There's no requirement for you know, local sheriffs to actually report violent offenders. So the database, when you get a background check, isn't fully complete. Whether that's good, whether it's bad, whether it's indifferent, I don't know. But, you know, there's room to talk about things. One of the major points that I really want to bring up that was kind of one of the hardest things for me to swallow is the fact that we talked about, you know, whatever her name's school is, I'm sorry, Stone Mary Majority something school, the school down in Parkland, and it was tragic. And you have Pulse, and it was tragic. But hundreds of people lose their lives every year to gun violence in the state of Florida. Hundreds of them. You have hundreds of children that have lost their lives to gun violence in Florida. And just the past couple of years. In most of these representatives' terms, you've had hundreds of people lose their lives to gun violence. Most of them, a lot of them, were just bystanders. You know, stray bullets going here and stray bullets going there. And the one thing that this bill didn't attack at all is the fact that the majority of gun violence isn't in schools. The majority of violence is in urban neighborhoods where there are gangs, is in places where lawless people don't care about laws, so they're going to go and do things that they just don't care about. And all these laws that we're making only affect law-abiding people. Because if you're willing to break the law, then laws don't mean anything to you. So all the laws that we make only affect law-abiding citizens. And I think that's an important thing to remember when we go and make laws, is we heard all these assault weapons bans and everything else like that. And assault weapons bans sound like a great idea until you realize that there's still, like, you know, according to how they determine assault weapons and the senators and the representatives, the way they wanted to do it, there's anywhere from like 14 to 20 million assault rifles in America. If you make all of them illegal, believe me, they're all not going to get turned in. They're just going to be sold on the black market for a hell of a lot more money. And all you're going to do is do the same thing that prohibition has caused for drugs. You're going to make it illegal. You're going to make criminals now the salesmen instead of licensed dealers who actually care about who these guns go to. And you're not going to affect the system in any way. In fact, you're going to make it worse. And I think Chicago's already proved that. So that's something that we need to remember when we make laws, is laws only affect law-abiding citizens. You know, some of the other sentiments that I kind of got out of this year, or out of this whole endeavor, is that there are a lot of good people up in Tallahassee. A lot of people that at the end of the day care about things. And I know, you know, a lot of people this week, including myself, said, hey, you know, these are all emotional arguments. There's no facts. There's no facts. Well, at the end of the day, sometimes laws need to be made a little bit on emotion. You know, sometimes we need to take into the fact that we care about our kids, that we care about our communities, that we want to see our neighbors do good, that we want to see all of these programs work. We just disagree about the way that we go about them. So, you know, I'll kind of, I guess, go into the future of what we need to do, what we need to see, what we need to have happen. First off, going up and legislating this thing, freaking cool. I gotta say, thanks guys for helping me do it. One of the best experiences of my life by far was seeing how the sausage is made. I met representatives and senators, and I can tell you right now, Tallahassee knows who the Libertarian Party is now. Good, bad, or indifferent, shitmojis or not, they know who the Libertarian Party is. I met every single representative and every single senator from Orange County. I have several of them that are actually going to come out and speak at some of our business meetings now because they absolutely want to come and get involved. I met several of our representatives who are like, you know what? I'm a closet libertarian. I got to run on the side of you know, the Republicans because that's where the money comes from. But believe you me, you guys get a ground game going. If you guys can make it where this, that, or the other thing works, I'm switching sides. Blew my mind. That I wanted to just kind of click my heels and go skipping out of the office when I heard him say that. I met with Representative Fine, who is actually, I believe, Brevard's representative, and he's a big gun guy. But him and I got talking. You know what he told me? Are you sure you're actually a libertarian? And I looked at him and I go, dude, you're a Republican. What are you talking about? And he goes, all right, let me ask you a few questions. Someone who's sick shows up to a hospital without insurance. Do you treat him or do you let him go? He said you have to let him go if you're a real libertarian. I go, okay. He goes, now let me ask you maybe an easier question. Because that one's kind of complicated because you can find extra funding once you're at a hospital for people. You can have funds, you can volunteer funds, you can do fundraising. There's a whole bunch of different things. Police officers show up to a scene. Someone made a proper choice not to wear your seatbelt. As a libertarian, do you take them out, put them in an ambulance, and bring them to the hospital if they don't have health insurance? Or do you leave them on the scene? They made a choice. Libertarianism isn't always perfect. Everyone likes the sound of, you know, my freedoms and my liberties and, you know, people should have the freedom to do everything. But do you understand that freedoms have consequences? Choices have consequences. So getting to meet him and getting to talk with him was actually a thrilling experience for the 8 minutes that we did it. I think that Brevard has a great ally in their representative, and I believe that, you know, that's definitely a member that they should hold out to. Another one, District 44, Ozalewski. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. I got to talk to him a little bit. He actually knows Dustin, so he said on the live chat I'm going to give a little shout out for him. He wanted me to say hi to Dustin next time I saw him, and you know, he was actually very friendly to us. He said, "Hey man, I'm kind of a closet small L. You know, I agree with a lot more libertarian principles than I do Republican principles, but again, Republicans are winning races. We aren't." And I think that's something that we need to take away. Convention was great. We had all this motivation, and then we went up and I got to legislate this bill, and we're fundraising and we're doing all this stuff. So what does that mean? Well, that means we got to start getting into our communities. Like I was here today, it's a volunteer group. It's a neighborhood group to say, what do we want our neighborhood to look like? How can we make it safer? I sat down with 2 of our city commissioners today and actually got to talk about, hey, can we get solar powered stuff in here? Can we get sidewalks that are efficient? Can we do this? Can we do that? And they said, actually, we have studies in the works. If you want to be a part of it, get involved. We'll save you a seat. All it took was asking. So where do we go from here? We got to get involved. We have to start thinking about, how do we want to start crafting the next 10 years, the next 20 years, the next 30 years? Where do we want to leave our children when they're grown and they start having children? What kind of world do we want to leave for them? And if we really are the volunteer party, if we really are the party of change, if we really are the party of principles, then we need to start standing on them. We need to start doing stuff. We need to start getting involved in our local communities. Volunteer. Get involved. If you want to have a debate about guns, come with me, or go to Tallahassee on your own. Let's start debating guns. But the one thing that I took away from this weekend was the fact that the biggest failure in Parkland and all these other school shootings and stuff like that is the community wasn't present. Everyone can say, yeah, that guy was kind of a weirdo. That guy, was kind of out on a limb. He was a little strange, or he was this or that or the other. But at the end of the day, no one reached out. No one asked him if they could help him. No one asked if they needed help, or they needed a shoulder to cry on, or anything else like that. The community left them. We can't have parents that are just absent. They don't go to PTA meetings anymore. They aren't a part of their kids' lives. They don't ask them if they had a good day at school or talk to them anymore. We have to be a part of our community's lives, our families' lives, our neighbors' lives. Until we are a part of their lives, we aren't going to make change. So one of the things I did today was I went to our neighborhood community and we talked, and I met great people. I made tons of friends tonight, and we're about to do amazing things out here in the Milk District. And it's an amazing feeling because it's all volunteers working with government to find solutions. I mean, isn't that the name of the game? But we have to get involved. We have to know what's going on. We have to be able to spend time on this stuff. So for the Libertarian Party, what do we do from here? How do we spend our money? What do we do to go forward? Well, we get active. We almost raised $20,000 in 1 week. $20,000. I'm pretty sure that's more than we raised last year, and we did it in a week. We could raise $100,000 before summer's over. We could raise $1 million before next year's over. What are we going to do with it? We have to start getting involved. We have to have local outreach. We have to start having local community involvement, and we have to start using our resources to affect change. We might not be able to spend $100,000 on a campaign to get someone elected, but you know what we can do? We can spend $20,000 to get ourselves local offices, to get printers, to get paper, to staff it with volunteers, to look up every single piece of legislation that's going on and to find divisive ways to go fight it. We can get involved with our local commissioners. We can email. We can start email chains. We can appoint people to be legislative chairs and find out not just what's going on at the state level, but what's going on at our community levels. We don't need to elect people in order to change the minds of those who are elected. We just have to reach out to enough people and get them to believe that we can make the change happen. We just have to ask. Okay, guys? It's the most important thing that you can take away with this. We just have to ask. Ask people what they need. Ask how they can help. Ask how they can get involved. And then put them in place and empower them to make it happen. I was one guy. I'm one guy. I went up and I affected change. I changed people's minds on this bill. Elected officials' minds on this bill. Every single person that is involved in Orange County at the state level now knows who the Libertarian Party is, and they actually want to reach out to us. I had such good conversations about them. You know, with the Republicans, we talked not just about, you know, the gun bills and stuff like that, but fiscal budgets and actually creating volunteer organizations to solve some of the problems in the community. And I talked about the Milk District and other things where people are willing to volunteer their time. Give us a tiny bit of resources from the city and we'll do all the legwork on the labor. We'll do everything that needs to happen in order to get this stuff done. We just need that little tiny bit of help from the government. That's small government for you right there, folks. I went and talked to Democrats about property rights and about how, you know, big government's coming in and just taking people's property, especially in urban areas, and just redeveloping it without the opinions of the local people. If you own your own property, you should not be forced to sell it for whatever the government decides is a fair price. It shouldn't happen. They shouldn't have the right to take your property. They shouldn't have the right to say whether or not you can collect rainwater or whether or not you have to be connected to a power grid in order to have solar panels on your house or anything else. What color you can paint your house or anything like that. The community should decide that, not the government. So I had some great discussions with Democrats. I had, you know, for as much as people might not like Carlos, I had good discussions with him about the fact that, you know, he wants to just see good stuff done in the community. And, you know, for people that we might think are enemies, we might be able to become good friends. It just takes talking. It takes asking them, what are you passionate about? What are we passionate about? And then having discussions about it and being respectful. At the end of the day, it's about respect. It's about responsibility. And if you can have conversations, if you can have disagreements without being disagreeable, you can get a lot done. If you can have disagreements without being disagreeable, you can make a community. And I really want people to take that to heart as we go forward as a party, that we can have disagreements in our party, but we can still get stuff done. You know, I talked to Omar today on the way home. He reached out to me and he said, hey, you know, you guys are doing great jobs, and I am actually excited for the first time in a long time that we are going to get stuff done in this party. And you know what, Omar? I really hope we do. I hope for the first time in a long time that this is the lighting of the torch that is going to change the Libertarian Party in Florida. And when we go to convention in 2020, we are going to be the largest party there by double. When we go to convention, we are going to be the largest region in the state when we go to convention. When we do this stuff, we are going to be a force to reckon with. Not because we got tons of money behind us, not because we've got Nobel laureates and everything like that, but because we have dedicated, smart people that want to work together because in their hearts they want to make change. And that's all it takes, folks. It doesn't take, you know, big money, big government, big everything like this. We don't need to spend $1 million to make an effect. Allison Foxhall, for $30,000, got 1,400 people to vote for her. In perspective, it took Margaret Good almost $750,000 to get 40,000 votes. If you do the math on that, I think Allison came out ahead on the number of votes that we got for the amount of money that we spent. And we can do that all day. We don't have to run candidates to affect legislation. We just got to be smart about how we do it. We have an entire affiliate and a school affiliate on campus at FSU that are willing to go into the legislature and talk to our representatives for us, just like I did this week. If we only empower them to do it. If we only say, hey, here's a structure that you can follow, here's some talking points, and give them help from the state. You know, when I reached out every single day this week and I said, hey, here's what's going on. Now, here's what I need you to do in your local communities. I mean it. When I say that we need backing from our local communities, nothing is going to get done if we don't have strong affiliates. Nothing is going to get done if we don't have strong communities. Until we are willing to raise our membership bars, until we are willing to get volunteers and spend the time. Facebook's great, guys. I'm on Facebook right now, but at the end of the day, it doesn't do anything. You make relationships by meeting people in person. We've got to go door to door. We've got to make phone calls. We've got to send out flyers. We have got to start spending our money wisely and getting our best bang for the buck, and that is physically making connections with people, getting events to bring people out, going to the gun range, going and having, meetings at the park and doing this and doing that. That's how we're going to affect change. Getting on college campuses and just having conversations with people, because I guarantee you, if we go out to free speech zones out on these campuses and we're there week in and week out, those same 100 people that are going to walk up to us and debate us every single time, they might not change their voter party, but they're going to change the way they vote, because after a while, if you hear enough of varying opinions, your opinions are going to change because you realize that there's two sides to a story and you're going to learn something from them. So, I've gone on for a while and I've talked about the bill. And if you have questions about the bill, hey, reach out to me. I know more about it than anyone. But going forward as a political party, and as a political party to be reckoned with, we don't have to fundraise what the other two do. The other two waste money. We've just got to be smart about the money that we spend. Okay, guys? We can make apps that can do 50% of the legwork that they do with in-house people. Why? Because they're still stuck in the 1980s and we're making the 2020 version of what a party should be. We can force multiply our people by being smart about it. We can get involved in our local communities and get people invigorated. Go after the NPAs. They're intelligent people that didn't want to associate with the Democrats or Republicans. Why? Because they know that both of those parties are broken. There's 3.8 million NPAs in the state of Florida, well, independents, which are now being put into the NPA category, that we can go after. And we have to go after them. We have to reach out to all the libertarians in our affiliates, get back in touch with them, and even if for no other reason than to let them know that we're here, we're loud, we're here to stay, and we're going to make a difference. That's all it takes, because you never know what comes from one of those things. It could be that they don't do anything right now, but in 4 years when we start running candidates, those guys start writing us $10,000 checks, because believe me, there's libertarians out there like that. You might have people that have special abilities that we don't know about, that are computer programmers or artists or social media gurus or everything like that, but until we start putting them onto lists so that we can reach out to them when we have necessities that we need for them to fill, we're never going to be able to utilize them. So get smart about the way you run your affiliates. Communicate with other affiliates. Find out what their needs are. Maybe you guys do one thing great and your neighbor affiliate does another thing great, and you guys can combine your efforts to make a great region. Start doing it. Start getting involved. Start communicating. Small doesn't mean unpowerful. Small just means we got to be smart about the power that we have. All right, guys? I think that we are going to do great things this year. Light that torch, guys. Be the change that you want to see in this world. Don't expect other people to change it. Be the light that you want to see and shine that light bright, because people will follow. All it takes is for one person making that first step and 50 will follow. I don't remember where I heard it. I actually think it was C. Michael Pickens when we had the... that training class at Dubstred Country Club. And he said, that one person, all it took was one person to start dancing goofy. He was the first guy. It took balls to do that. It takes more balls to be that second person, because that second person makes that first person not look crazy. That second person takes a lot of courage to step up and say, you know what? Why not? Why not take the chance? Because there are going to be people that follow. And the more people that follow, the more people that recognize that, hey, these guys aren't crazy. They got something to them. Let's go for it. It only takes a few people to start a movement. You just got to be dedicated, but you got to be loud and you got to be visible. We can't sit behind our keyboards. We've got to get out into the communities. If that's the one thing that I can impress upon you guys, get out into the communities. Get loud, get proud, and make it happen. All right? We're going to do great things this year. This isn't the first bill that we're going to legislate. This isn't the last bill that we're going to legislate. We are going to fight these things, and we are going to get effective changes. We are going to make things happen. Share ideas with people. Make ideas happen. Cultivate ideas. And if you have an idea that works, share it with the whole affiliate. That's what the state is for. Shoot that thing up and have someone at the state disseminate to every single affiliate and said, hey, this is what worked for us. It might not perfectly work for you, but you can take parts out of it, make it your own, and make things happen. So I guess, you know, I'm going to leave you with this. Nothing ever changes unless someone is willing to take the first step to make it change. And if no one is taking that first step, be the first person to take the first step. It's scary. You have that gut feeling of, am I going to look stupid? Am I going to be crazy? You know what? You might fail. You might fall flat on your face and fail miserably. But you know what? You had more balls than every single person standing next to you who sat on the sidelines and did nothing. You know more about what you can accomplish now as an individual than you ever would have had you not given it a chance. And for that, you are stronger and wiser than every single one of those people watching you, because those people watching you don't know what it took to go and do that. And that is the one lesson that I learned from this. I now know how to go and lobby. I now know how to go and fight these bills. I now know how the sausage is made in you know, Tallahassee. I know how to talk to people. I know the ins and outs. I know how to put in, you know, cards to make sure that I don't just speak on the bill, but I need to speak on the amendment. Sometimes I don't need to speak. I can just put my dissent in. You know, there's these minute things about how things work. So get out to your local commission meetings. Get out to your local soil and water and everything else meetings. Get out to every single place that citizens intercept government. Learn how it works and make the change. So it's the only way that it's going to change. Don't be afraid to do it, because I assure you, at the end of the battle, even if you fail, you haven't failed, because you accomplished something as an individual. And that's the biggest lesson that I can possibly give to you guys. We didn't fail up there. We gained very important lessons. We made allies. And at the end of the day, we made progress as a party. So I love you guys. Thank you all for the support. Thank you for everything that you've done. You know, for all the people that are doing everything behind the scenes for the party, not just, you know, legislatively, but for all the volunteers that are out there. You guys are freaking rock stars. I may be the guy in front of the camera, but for the one person that's in front of the camera, there's 100 people behind him or her turning gears and making it happen. And you guys are the unsung heroes that are amazing. Never yell at people, disgrace people, or anything else like that, because any volunteer that gives their time, regardless of the product that they produce, gave something of themselves in the pursuit of something better. And that stands for something. Thanks, guys. Thanks for everything that you've done. And come and see us out there, you know, Libertarian Party of Orange County. Let's make it happen, guys. We are the party of change. We are the party of the future. And we are going to turn heads.